Test, test. All right. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Ready? How's the audience doing today? Awesome. Awesome. All right.
Great conference.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about identity and blockchain today. So for a lot of people that maybe new to the space, they might be wondering why are you working on the identity problem as it relates to blockchain?
First of all, identity is like solving the identity problem is like the holy grail for online commerce and online interaction.
So why is that?
Because first of all, there's a huge rise of cyber attacks and hacking and ID fraud. And ID fraud is so rife in the world that it's sort of an explosion of it. Not only that, there's a rise of millions and billions of devices that have no identity, that are unknown, and connected devices. So, and blockchain is a natural fabric for actually creating identity for these humans, objects, and devices.
Nicole, why identity on blockchain?
Look, I think we've reached a stage where your digital identity is going to become your most valuable asset. So if you can't make sure that your assets are protected, they're uncorrupted, they're exactly where you put them, and they're only able to be accessed by either yourself or somebody who you've given explicit permission to via an encryption key or something of the sort, you actually can't say that your identity is yours and that it's safe. And I think in particular, blockchain can provide an enormous benefit to a world where so much of our identity now is compromised in terms of all the transactions we make. I mean, the hacks, the breaches that Hans talked about. Even places like, the supermarket you shop, the Target situations, let alone the Swift situations, mean that your identity is becoming a form of currency. It's becoming a form of currency for terrorists, money launderers, and so forth. If blockchain can play a part in locking down that asset, like any other asset, diamonds, silk, organic fruit, in Jesse's case, then I think it's got a very important role to play.
What do you think?
So we see, because we are providing solutions for primarily for anti-money laundering, KYC, solution for cryptocurrency and blockchain. For us, what we are looking is to solve this particular problem in our process. So identity is a very important part of our process, and we are looking for solutions, and we are building the solution, but effectively identity, so who are you dealing with in terms of the person, right, or counterparty. This is something which is extremely right now. One of the problems is when you are opening an account. Let's say you are working in the cryptocurrency space and you are opening an account in any exchange around the world. So you have to go to each exchange and register again and again and again and again. And at the end, what you are finding on the other side, right? So these part of the exchanges, you see that identity is very, quite often is, being compromised. So it's fraudulent. And if we would be solving this problem in terms of who is this person and how we can make sure that this person is the right person, and nothing has changed in the meantime, then we are solving a quite important problem for the whole industry, not only cryptocurrency, but entire, let's say, financial, and even broader, because the know your client, your customer is very important part of this.
Okay. So let's take a step back to basics. One thing that I struggle with, which maybe is an unanswerable question, is what is identity? And like, how do you? I mean, often identity is like, right, that's a human, that's a unique person. So how do you define identity, and how do you actually check for that?
Okay, I think it's very important to think about how this question, first of all, I think it's about differentiating oneself and differentiating device from other devices. How does someone know another person or know a device? Is that those people have identity. So I know you because you have an identity. Now, online it's more difficult because the person's not right there. But I think what Blockpass is trying to do is give the identity back to the user. So user-centric, user-controlled identity. And that right now, most of identity on the internet is 90%. Identity and identity data is 90% is centralized. It's controlled not by the user, it's controlled by companies or governments. So we're trying to create a platform where the user gets their identity back, and they can control their identity and their identity data. The identity data only goes where they want it to go. So I think that's really important. And so identity, real identity is sort of, for humans, is freedom and independence and that identity data.
What do you think?
I mean, obviously when you're dealing in person with somebody, you have ways of verifying their identity. It can still be, you know, corrupted and somebody can still present themselves fraudulently, but it is much harder than in an online environment where by its very nature, you know, transactions are basically, you know, done on the basis of trust alone. And that's why we've had to have these intermediaries like banks and governments and other people that almost sit as an independent verifier, so that when I want to transact with you, I know that because I'm going through a bank, that account has been set up by you. So really the important part is that we trust the bank. We don't have to trust each other. If I'm just going to transact peer-to-peer with you without anything like a blockchain, you know, sort of in a controlling structure around it, I actually don't have any guarantees over that. Now, if the blockchain comes into play, to Hans's point, you do give the power back to those two individuals, the sender and the receiver, and not to the central intermediary. To the question of identity, I think your identity is obviously created at birth, but does not cease when you die, which is the really interesting part of all of this. So everything that you create in your lifetime, the assets and the social media, the publications, you know, the photos, the films, they live on. And they belong to your identity. So your identity, in a sense, is infinite. How do you control the use of that asset? And even to the point where, even if you try and do that via an estate and put controls and legal controls around it, it's often impossible to enforce. So I think the blockchain and identity are inextricably bound together in terms of a solution to a problem that, you know, trying to have centralized structures has created. So I think the only solution is to decentralize it, take the power back, and basically control the traffic of identity via something like blockchain.
Right, so I think, you know, identity in principle is very, you know, broad definition, I mean, broad, you know, spectrum. You can almost see, you know, for every process is slightly different. What does it mean, identity? You know, from my perspective, it's something which you can say is something which is, when presented to you, is, you know, there's a proof that it's 100% factually correct. So there's, you know, no, you know, you cannot deny this information, right? It's a different aspect, which is, you know, what kind of outcome you want to have from this. Because if you have, for example, you know, in the KYC process, you can have, you know, certain information. And first you have whether the documents are actually, you know, not fake. Second, whether this person is the person who is presenting to you, and etc. and etc. So you have to build, you know, the identity slightly broader in the process which you basically look at. So I think, you know, in terms of, you need to first define what you're looking for, and then, you know, make sure that the outcome is, you know, a proof that it's 100% factually correct. So this is you know, how we would identify the identity.
And so you guys have talked about people taking their identity back for themselves. How do you see blockchain solutions out there going mainstream where people are actually taking identity back for themselves? How do you see people actually, mainstream users, everyone in this room, they figured out how to use a Bitcoin wallet and a crypto wallet, but 99% of the population still hasn't. How do you see that going mainstream?
I think that's a really important question. First of all, we've got to focus on the user, make it easy for the user, much easier. The blockchain ecosystem and community has done a terrible job at making blockchain easy to use, and we all know that. So the user experience is absolutely key. So, and I think you have to use sort of intuitive sort of UX design that will be used over mobile, over platforms that users and people are used to using, and not so fragmented in nature that they have a hard time using it. So that's absolutely key. And you have to incentivize them to use it. So, nobody's going to go and do an identity verification just for the heck of it. So you have to incentivize them to do that through a reward program, or this product is so great, this exchange is so great, and also make it so easy, the process of KYC. So like we've gone through KYC, all of us have gone through KYC, and sometimes it takes weeks and months to do it. And to make it as easy as possible through a platform like Blockpass is what we're trying to do. We're trying to achieve that. And I think that's really important, to do it very quickly so that you don't have to do KYC over and over again. You do it once, and then you have access to all these services, and financial services, and exchanges, and et cetera. So I think that's really important. UX is key.
Look, I absolutely agree. UX or CX, whatever way you want to phrase it, is one of the things I think that is critical in terms of any adoption. As you say, incentivization is the other part of it. So the experience has to be good. It's got to be seamless, frictionless. It's got to resonate with the customer. It's got to be basically not bound by repetition. To your point about KYC, having to redo and redo and redo every time you want to change banks or get a new passport or whatever. But I think what's really interesting is that in terms of the UX, the best UX design that I have seen has been that human-centered design, where it's not the technology, so the blockchain itself in this case, or identity management systems, governing the process. It's how a human being would go about proving their identity. Now that could be as simple as a biometric imprint of some description. And at Unisys we're working on the 5 levels of bio at the moment. We've got obviously things like fingerprint and iris are fairly ubiquitous now, but things like behavioural biometrics, voice biometrics, and things like that, I think are incredibly user-friendly. In terms of your, ability to set up your identity with a provider, why can't your unique voice imprint, be used? Things like that. So this is this seamless experience, and we're trialling actually some passport biometrics with the UK Passport Office, which is all around, a completely seamless, you don't need a paper passport anymore, which is the way it should be now. I mean, we do have that technology. So the user experience is critical, and also people realizing that, your identity is more than, a piece of paper or a couple of pieces of paper that you've accumulated, to prove who you are over a particular period. It's also your academic credentials, it's things you've done, and one of the other areas that I have friends working in is in academic verification. So there is a massive market for people who present themselves fraudulently as graduates, of certain universities, they have certain degrees, certain qualifications, and a blockchain system for academia and for qualifications, like it could for the medical profession, could really alleviate that problem. So it's not just those core documents, it's all these other documents that make you who you are.
I mean, that's interesting question, and I think the whole identity aspect we discussed is quite quite challenging. And I think blockchain, one of the parts which is being sold by blockchain is, the 100%, assurance that, the proof basically that you actually, what you have at a given point of time, right? You have data stamp, timestamp, yeah. So this is one situation is there. And I think this is the basis for, anything that you're building up. In terms of adoption, this is a slightly different story. This is where you actually work with the client. There's data protection aspect. There's data security aspect. There's, even if you have a, let's say, customer, right? And we talk about exchanges of banks. So this is very sensitive relationship between the customer, client, and the bank, for example. And the bank, this is the most precious aspect as well. So they don't want, this to lose this control over this relationship. So, it's effectively what we need to build as a solution is, with the KYC utility or the central database with the information, right? But the central database with the information, which is then, controlled by the owner of the information, is more complex, right? And then, the underlying blockchain. But, how it's going to be adopted, I want to see, you guys, working on this and, solving this problem, because this is going to be tricky. I know how to use this in terms of, once adopted, we can make beautiful things out of it, but, it's not easy to create.
Okay, so I've got some more questions that I can ask because I'm endlessly fascinated by the identity problem, but let's open it up to the audience and see if anyone else has some questions. Over here. Do we have a microphone for him?
All right, I'm yours. Who had the question?
Over there.
Him first, yeah.
Hi, question about the collection of data for identity for the KYC process. Can you just comment on your thoughts or opinions related to using in-browser trackers that are linked, that are on exchange sites, for example, or analytics sites for looking at coin prices, let's say, or in mobile app trackers that are used for the app owner to understand their audience, but could also be conceivably linking identities from existing digital profiles into blockchain address profiles? Thanks.
Who wants to take that one?
Well, I think this is a very good question, and you probably that's why the problem with the adoption is coming up, because this is the question which you're going to have. At what point you are comfortable with giving the data, and who is the owner of the processor of the data, and whether you are able to assure that nobody's actually accessing the data without your control. Well, I think this is the challenge. One of the UX UI basically, and the technology behind this. Hope I don't have answer to this, but so I hope they're gonna have it. But definitely a very good question.
The way we are approaching it is that we're totally not taking any data at all. We're not keeping any data at all. So the user keeps the data on their phone. All the data stays on their phone, and it goes to the merchants if they want it to. It goes to where they want it to go, and eventually they can sell the data. It's their own data if they want to, but. Other than to send the data to whatever service that they use, no one's tracking their data or picking up their data in any way.
One more question? Any other questions from the audience? Right here.
There's a lot of KYC focused stuff, and obviously I know why. Pablo, can you go a little bit more towards how other aspects of identity that people don't really understand or tied to their identity are coming into this, such as tracking how they're actively participating, let's say, in the economy or in the crypto space, their behavioral patterns, how does that put risk on people, and how does that tie into actual identity and privacy, even more importantly?
Thank you, Grant, for this question. You put me on the spot. Listen, I think in general, the whole idea of privacy right now is being challenged, right? And this is something which, there are certain projects which are basically trying to protect the privacy. But if you are dealing with the blockchain space in general, you have to be aware that there are companies like ours we're extracting enormous data about your transactions. The history of transactions, the sources, external sources putting in. So, right now it's like when we, from my perspective, I spent several years in banking space, right? Where when you talk about KYC AML aspect, everyone is primarily focused on the KYC, so know your client. Right now, if you see the data which you can get from blockchain, which is very accurate, very good, and which you can analyze, I would say that we need to step away from KYC and move to AML. Right, which is more transaction monitoring, history of transaction, patterns of transactions, etc., which is giving a completely new aspect. If you add to this any aspects of the biometrics, any aspects of documents which you collect, it's very powerful data. So we are entering into the space where we need to be very careful how we are sharing, how we are using things, because it's like there are not necessarily tools right now that can be detecting something, but they're probably going to be in 2 years' time. So you need to be aware that internet and blockchain in particular, it's a huge space of analyzing data, building data.
Perfect. Yeah, we're out of time, but Russia has been keeping track of a lot of people and possibly influencing certain elections. So that's a very, very interesting topic. We're out of time now.
All right, I know it's an interesting topic and lots to talk about. So please find these guys today, tomorrow, online, wherever. I'm sure they're very open to it. Big round of applause, everybody.